Alright guys, so I'm always getting asked about fuel mileage and all the different just aspects that go into it, and so I'm always talking quite a bit on it. And I've responded in some of my videos, but I figured I should just go ahead and do a video now that I've got 3 swaps with somewhat decent fuel averages on all of them, and I want to just go over everything. I mean, the first thing I want to go and get into is just that I'm in Wyoming, and if anybody's driven through here, it is the most ridiculous fuel mileage pretty much anywhere in the US. I think I-25 north and south ranks like, I don't know, in the top 10 for worst mileage anywhere. My normal driving is pretty much 4,300 foot elevation to just over 5,000 on my just daily trips to town, and I take the Jeep regularly up to 8 to 10,000 foot, and that just is pretty terrible for fuel mileage, honestly. So with that being said, a lot of these averages are not going to be as good as other people can get. I know when I take any of these vehicles, any of my vehicles at all, down into Colorado, it seems like as soon as I cross the border, I am just, the fuel gauge just quits moving. All that to say, the best the best example I can give you is the dummy gauge on my MK5 TDI. It pretty much shows 40 to 46 miles a gallon on good days in perfect conditions, but around here it's pretty common for me to drop that thing down to as low as 28, if not 32 miles a gallon on the car regularly. So there's just a lot of wind and hills that affect it. So I guess to start with, the Toyota is probably my best case scenario, and I've clocked it at 30 miles a gallon at 80 mile an hour, which is pretty incredible. That's best case scenario, no wind and pretty average hills. I would say typically I am more about 26 miles a gallon with my drive, which is pretty much going up and down about 500 foot elevation and average speed of 65 mile an hour, mostly highway. I don't have a whole lot of city driving. There's just stop and go up to 65 again. So, and for that, the overdrive gear on this Toyota is, I believe, a 0.75 in fifth with 410 gears, and these measure about a 34-inch tire. They are a 275 70 18, but that is a 10 ply tire, and those wheels, the 18-inch wheels, are pretty heavy. So, and surprisingly enough, I think these trucks are supposed to weigh about 3,600 pounds, but with aftermarket front and rear bumpers and the tires, this thing sits at 4,100 pounds. So just over 4,000 pounds, and yeah, about 26 to 30 miles a gallon. I mean, the nice thing is the bumper and of course the windshield is pretty aerodynamic. That being said, the Jeep is obviously the worst case scenario, and I've got a few questions about what my mileage was like with the 40s on it, so I figured I'd leave those on for a while. And I went ahead and got some numbers, and with, like I say, that average speed of probably 65, I run at about 70. Anything over that, and it was struggling a little bit, and the EGTs were getting up there. So that and the tires started to shake pretty good over 70. So that's about what I ran it at. And I came back with 19 miles a gallon running 40s. And so for this setup, just to give you a comparison here, actually, um, that here is the 35 that I run on the Jeep normally, and you can see it's about an inch taller. And then compared to the 40s here, granted the 40s are squatting a little, I only have about 10 psi in those, but you can see how much taller they are than the 35. And yeah, so the specs on the Jeep, getting that 19 miles a gallon, it's got 488 gears, about the same gear ratios, but I'm only running it in fourth with these 40s, so it's 1-to-1. I'm running about 3,000 RPM, and that is what I got. So going back to, I normally run it with the 35s, and that averages me about 22 to 24 miles a gallon. Not too much worse than the Jeep or than the Toyota. Even with the 488 gears running closer to 3,000 RPM all the time. The Toyota, I average more like 27 to 2,800 RPM with the 410s. And I think it's just the aerodynamics. Obviously, most people know these Jeeps are more like a brick wall. That's about what these two get. I don't have the Chevy here, so you'll have to just watch a couple of clips here on it. Just for comparison here, the tires that I'm running on, or that are running on the Chevy, is this. I think it measures out to about a 30-inch tire or a little less. It's a 245/70/16, and that's with 373 gears in the Chevy. But the other thing is that 700R4 automatic has a 0.7 overdrive, which drops the RPMs down probably 200 or 300, and it's a little bit too much to make that useful for the most part, unless you're over 70. You pretty much need to leave it in third just for EGTs, and you can just tell up here at elevation they really need a little more airflow with the higher RPMs. I know a lot of people run these things closer to 2,000 RPM, but with this elevation it doesn't quite work for me anyway. From what I've seen, I did run the Jeep with 35s and 410s for quite a while, and I just could not use fifth gear on the hills. The EGTs would go crazy, and you could just tell it didn't have the power. And like I say, if anybody's driven through here, you'll be able to just know what I'm talking about. It's a different kind of driving up here. And anyway, the Chevy, the best average we've gotten so far, which isn't great because we've been just hot rodding it around and there's not a lot of highway miles on it, but we came back with 22 miles a gallon on that, mostly running it in third. So again, it's kind of hard to give you highway RPM characteristics, but it's probably between 27 and 3,000 RPM on the Chevy as well, with the smaller tires and a 1-to-1 ratio in third. And so you can kind of see that just the RPMs don't seem to affect it too much, because from what I've heard, most people are getting in the high 20s to low 30s with these swaps. So for me to be running them closer to 3,000 RPM and still getting decent mileage is pretty incredible. So I know for most of the stuff, I mean, for these two swaps, it was a no-brainer because it almost doubled the mileage. The Chevy swap, I can't say I would recommend just pulling out a good 350, especially with Vortec heads. Those 350s could get close to 20 miles a gallon. I just don't know that this swap is justifiable on that setup, but especially that old TBI 350, it had a lot of room to improve. And especially with it being a blown up engine, it made a pretty smooth transition into the TDI. And obviously we got some more work to do with it, but overall, still really impressed with the mileage on all three of these. I expect the Chevy on the highway will get closer to 24, 25 miles a gallon. And I think that's about it. I didn't give you the weight on the Jeep though. It's actually almost exactly the same as the Toyota, which was really surprising to me. With the 35s, it's at 3,900 pounds, and the 40s bring it just over 4,000 pounds. So they are literally almost the exact same weight. So that 3 or 4 mile per gallon difference I see on them is most likely due to just the brick wall aerodynamics of the Jeep. And there's just not a whole lot you can do about that. So anyway, hopefully this helps you guys out, just seeing what the potentials are for these swaps and just what you're looking at mileage wise. I know I've definitely seen Jeep guys getting upwards of 30 miles a gallon when they're going slower. You know, the 60 to 70 mile per hour definitely gives you better economy at lower elevation. But anyway, that pretty much sums it up. Feel free to comment on anything if you have any more questions. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys.